At 3:12 a.m., every radio in Nevada turned on at the exact same time. No storm, no signal test, no explanation. Ethan Hayes was the only one still inside the Desert Sky Observatory when it happened. The monitors in front of him flickered, not with static, but with patterns. Perfect geometric pulses repeating every 6 seconds. He leaned closer. The signal wasn't random. It was structured. Outside, the desert wind died instantly. The massive satellite dishes surrounding the observatory slowly rotated on their own, aligning toward a single dark section of the sky. Ethan hadn't touched the controls. His phone vibrated. No caller ID, no number, just a single message. You are looking in the wrong place. His pulse spiked. The signal abruptly shifted frequency, and the observatory's main screen displayed something impossible. A map of the United States appeared, but distorted, as if something beneath the country was glowing. Nevada, Utah, Arizona, 3 bright points forming a perfect triangle. Then the power cut out. Total darkness. Outside, the desert floor began to hum, not loud but deep, vibrational, like something massive awakening underground. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the control room in red. The satellite dishes outside locked into position and stopped moving. And then Ethan heard it, not through the speakers, not through the radios. Inside his head, a calm, neutral voice. Observation phase complete. His knees nearly gave out. The humming beneath the desert intensified. On the backup monitor, which shouldn't even have power, a new image appeared. A satellite image taken from orbit, but it wasn't from NASA. It showed Earth from a distance no human satellite had ever reached, and something else was in the frame, watching, hovering silently above the planet. The voice returned. Adjustment begins at sunrise. The screen went black. Outside in the Nevada desert, the ground cracked in 3 precise lines forming that same triangle, and Ethan finally understood one terrifying truth. Whatever sent the signal was already here. Sunrise in Nevada was never silent, but this one was. Ethan stepped outside the observatory just before dawn. The desert air felt heavy, charged, like before a lightning strike, except there were no clouds in the sky. In the distance, the cracked desert floor glowed faintly along 3 massive lines forming that perfect triangle. The fractures stretched for miles, too precise to be natural, too symmetrical to be random. Vibrated again. No signal bars, no service. Still, a notification appeared. Phase 2 confirmed. Across the horizon, military helicopters roared into view. Blackhawks, unmarked. They circled the triangle perimeter but didn't cross it. Even from a distance, Ethan could see something strange. Their instruments were failing mid-air. One helicopter tilted sharply before interfering with technology or rewriting it. The sun finally crested the mountains. The moment the first light touched the center of the triangle, the ground stopped humming. For half a second, everything was still. Then the air above the center distorted, bending like heat rising from asphalt. Except this distortion didn't fade. It thickened, condensed, and something began to descend. Not a ship, not a structure, a shape that hurt to look at. Angles folding into themselves, light bending inward instead of outward. Ethan staggered backward as every satellite dish behind him snapped toward the object in perfect synchronization. The motors screamed under the strain. Inside his mind, the voice returned, calmer now. Human resistance probability minimal. His chest tightened. This wasn't first contact. It was assessment. From the sky, something invisible pressed downward. The sand inside the triangle lifted into the air, forming spirals that moved counter to the wind. And then Ethan saw it. In the very center of the formation, beneath the descending distortion, stood a metallic structure. It hadn't fallen from the sky. It had risen from underground, smooth, dark, impossible, like it had been buried beneath the United States for centuries. Waiting. The voice spoke one final sentence before the observatory lost all power again. You are not the first civilization here. The structure began to open, and something inside started to move. The structure didn't open like a door. It unfolded. Metallic layers peeled back in total silence, rotating in directions that made no mechanical sense. No gears, no hinges. Just smooth, impossible motion. Ethan couldn't breathe. Inside the triangle, gravity shifted. The sand that had lifted into spirals suddenly froze mid-air, suspended like particles trapped in glass. Even the helicopters circling miles away stopped transmitting. Radio silence across 3 states. From within the dark structure, a faint light pulsed. Not bright, measured, like a heartbeat. Ethan's smartwatch flickered to life despite having no signal. A biometric warning flashed on the screen. Heart rate detected external. He stared at it in disbelief. External. The pulsing light from the structure synchronized with the reading. Boom, boom, boom. It wasn't a machine. It was alive. The voice returned clearer now. No distortion, no echo. Reactivation successful. The desert air rippled again, but this time Ethan felt something worse than fear. Recognition, as if the presence emerging from the structure already knew humanity. Already knew its patterns, its wars, its technology. A shadow stretched upward from inside the unfolding chamber. Not a creature, not fully, more like a projection pressing into reality from somewhere deeper. Ethan's mind flooded with images that weren't his own. Ancient skies over North America, a different coastline, massive geometric cities where deserts now stood, and then extinction. Not by asteroid, not by climate, by removal. The images vanished. Ethan collapsed to one knee, gasping. Across the cracked triangle, the glowing lines intensified and shot outward underground, racing across invisible pathways beneath the western United States. Maps across government facilities would later show it clearly. The lines were connecting Nevada, Utah, Arizona, California, and then farther. This wasn't a single structure. It was a network, buried deep beneath the continent. The voice delivered its next statement. Emotionless. Surface species developmental threshold reached. The shadow solidified slightly on forming edges. Limbs. A silhouette stepping forward from the chamber. Above Earth, beyond satellite range, something massive adjusted its position in orbit. Watching, calculating, preparing, and in that moment Ethan realized the horrifying truth. The signal at 3:12 a.m. wasn't a greeting. It was a wake-up alarm for something that had been sleeping under America for thousands of years, and sunrise had only begun the process. By 7:42 a.m., the White House Situation Room was sealed. Satellite feeds from the western United States were failing one by one, not destroyed. Blocked. As if something underground was projecting interference upward. Ethan watched in disbelief as black SUVs flooded the desert highway below the observatory. Armed personnel established a perimeter 5 miles wide around the glowing triangle. But they stayed outside. No one crossed the boundary, because the moment a drone attempted entry, it didn't crash. It disassembled, mid-air. Metals separating molecule by molecule before dropping to the sand like dust. Inside the triangle, the silhouette had stepped fully out of the structure. It wasn't solid. It wasn't light. It was density. A compression of space shaped vaguely like a tall humanoid frame, and it was scanning. Ethan felt it. Every memory, every fear, every thought briefly surfacing in his mind like files being opened. Across Las Vegas, power grids flickered. Air traffic controllers lost contact with inbound flights. GPS systems recalibrated themselves to impossible coordinates. Then came the emergency broadcast. Phones, TVs, car displays turned black. A single white message appeared. Remain calm, this is not an attack. The message wasn't from the government. The font wasn't recognized. The encryption protocol didn't exist. Back in the desert, the glowing lines beneath the ground expanded eastward at alarming speed. Underground sensors in Colorado and New Mexico began reporting seismic activity that wasn't tectonic. It was patterned, intentional. The silhouette lifted one arm, if it could be called that, and the air above it split open vertically, revealing a sliver of darkness deeper than night. Through that fracture, something massive shifted, waiting. Ethan's breathing slowed unnaturally. The voice spoke again, now audible in the air around him. Assessment phase ending, territorial reclamation pending. Reclamation. The word hit harder than invasion, because you don't reclaim something unless it was yours first. At that exact moment, classified archives deep beneath Washington, D.C. were opened without human authorization. Files long buried. Reports from the 1940s desert excavations. Sealed projects. Unexplained underground structures discovered and quietly abandoned. America hadn't built its military testing ranges here by accident. They had known something was buried under the desert. They just never managed to wake it. Until 3:12 a.m. Back in Nevada, the fracture in the sky widened. The massive presence above Earth shifted closer. And across the continent, millions of people felt it simultaneously. A pressure. A weight, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. The silhouette took one step forward beyond the triangle's boundary, and gravity across 3 states fluctuated. Cars lifted inches off highways. Windows shattered. Military helicopters spiraled out of control. The reclamation had begun. The first casualty wasn't from impact. It was from silence. At 8:03 a.m., every heartbeat within the triangle perimeter stopped for exactly 2 seconds. Doctors would later call it collective cardiac interruption. Those inside the zone didn't die, but they felt it, a forced pause, like something testing the switch. Ethan dropped to his knees as his chest locked mid-breath. For 2 endless seconds, there was nothing. No pulse, no sound, no wind. Then, everything resumed. Across hospitals in Nevada, monitors flatlined and then spiked back to normal. Panic erupted. News networks scrambled for explanations. But before any official statement could be made, the silhouette moved again. This time it looked up, straight toward the fracture in the sky. The massive presence above Earth responded. Cloud systems across the western states rotated unnaturally, forming a slow spiral visible from orbit. Not a storm. Alignment. The voice returned, no longer calm. Biological synchronization incomplete. The ground beneath the triangle split wider, revealing metallic structures stretching deep into darkness. Pillars arranged in a grid extending miles underground. A buried city, not ruins. Infrastructure. Active. Across Washington, D.C., classified defense satellites were manually redirected toward Nevada. The feed lasted 4 seconds before cutting out, but in those 4 seconds, analysts captured something that froze the room. The silhouette wasn't alone. Hundreds of similar shapes were visible beneath the surface, still dormant. This was only the first one to rise. Back in the desert, Ethan's phone activated again despite no battery remaining. A live map filled the screen. Glowing lines now stretched far beyond the southwest. Chicago, Texas, Florida, New York. Underground nodes beginning to pulse faintly. The network wasn't regional. It was continental. The voice spoke one final time, louder now, echoing not just in minds but in the air itself. Surface control returning to original architects. Military command authorized a strike. A hypersonic missile launched from the Pacific. It never reached Nevada. Mid-flight it froze, suspended motionless above the desert, then reversed direction, not exploding, returning. Across America, people stared at their screens in disbelief. The silhouette extended its arm fully, and the sky fracture widened enough to reveal part of the orbital presence. Not a ship, a structure spanning hundreds of miles, angular, ancient, watching, and descending, slowly. Gravity surged again, this time stronger. Buildings in Las Vegas cracked at their foundations. Highways buckled. Aircraft dropped suddenly before stabilizing. Ethan forced himself to stand. The silhouette turned its featureless head toward him directly, and for the first time, he heard something new in the voice. Curiosity. Human anomaly detected. The structure beneath him pulsed brighter, because somehow, the system had identified him. The word echoed in Ethan's skull. Human anomaly detected. The silhouette stepped closer. Gravity intensified around him. Sand lifting in slow spirals as if the world itself were bending toward the being. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he couldn't move because something inside him wasn't afraid. It was responding. His smartwatch flickered again. Heart rate synchronized, not with the structure, with the silhouette. The underground grid beneath Nevada pulsed violently, and across the continent, every dormant node brightened at once. Chicago, New York, Texas, Florida. Millions of faint underground signals activating simultaneously. Back in Washington, panic turned to silence as scientists confirmed the impossible. The pulse pattern wasn't random. It matched the human neural frequency spectrum. The system wasn't terraforming Earth. It was calibrating to humanity. The silhouette stopped just inches from Ethan. Up close, its surface wasn't solid. It was layers of shifting geometry, almost liquid, almost light. Then the voice changed. Not external, not imposed. It sounded closer. Genetic marker confirmed. Images exploded through Ethan's mind again, but this time clearer. Ancient structures beneath prehistoric North America. A civilization far older than recorded history. Not alien invaders. Architects. And one shocking truth. They had not created Earth. They had modified it. Human evolution hadn't been random. It had been accelerated, guided. But something had gone wrong thousands of years ago. The architects had been forced into stasis beneath the planet's surface, waiting for the surface species, humanity, to reach developmental threshold. Ethan staggered as a final image surfaced. Human DNA strands overlaying an unfamiliar code, a hidden layer embedded deep inside every human genome, a failsafe. The silhouette lifted its hand and gently, the descending orbital megastructure paused in its approach. The voice spoke with something new, not authority, not conquest, relief. Architect template verified, conflict unnecessary. The fracture in the sky slowly began to close, gravity normalized. The suspended missile dropped harmlessly into the desert sand. Across America, power grids stabilized. Aircraft regained control. Hospitals reported normal vitals. The reclamation had stopped because humanity wasn't trespassing. Humanity was part of the system. Ethan collapsed as the silhouette began dissolving back into streams of light, retreating into the underground chamber. Before vanishing completely, it left him with one final transmission. Phase 3 will require consent. The structure sealed. The cracked desert floor fused back together, and the orbital presence shifted not away from Earth, but into higher orbit, watching, waiting. That morning, the world believed disaster had been narrowly avoided, but Ethan knew the truth. This had never been an invasion. It had been an awakening, and Phase 3 would require a choice.